push-up is a primary strength move for your chest, the front head of your shoulders, and your triceps. It is also a stabilization move for your core. Primary setup when you're getting down to do a push-up is first figuring out whether you have the strength to perform this move on the toes or whether you need to perform it on the knees. We'll begin on the knees. If that's too easy, we'll progress and see if we are ready for the toes. So come on down onto the floor, onto your knees here. You're then going to walk those hands on out until your hips dip down. Once your hips dip down and they are in line with your shoulders, you're then going to walk your hands on out to where they are about at chest level and outside of shoulder width, just outside of shoulder width. We're then going to keep the core nice and tight as we lower our chest all the way towards the floor, keeping our head in line with our spine and keeping those abs nice and tight. Lower down all the way down and then press it back on up. Biggest mistakes made on this move. Number one, leaving the hips up into the air and leading with the chest while that butt is up. That comes from not walking those hands out far enough to where those hips dip down and they are in line with the rest of the spine. This will transfer more of that focus away from the chest and put it more on your shoulders. Another primary mistake is hand positioning that puts unnecessary strain on the wrists. Walking out into that hand position and then lowering down to where those elbows are flared out over those wrists. See how there's an angle here? I'm putting unnecessary strain on my wrists here. This can be easily corrected by moving my hands out slightly to where now those wrists are directly underneath of those elbows. So when you're in that push-up position, lower yourself all the way to the floor, look on out, try to see if those wrists are directly under those elbows. If they're not, make those adjustments. Another big issue in this move is collapsing with those abs and letting that back arch. So when you're out in that push-up position, coming down on that press up, you don't squeeze those abs. You'll see the chest lift up first, and then those hips kind of follow. You want your whole body from your head all the way down to your hips to move as one unit. All the way down, squeeze those abs, those hips and the chest are lifting off of the ground at the same time here. So key things to focus on again. Straight line between your head all the way down to the hips. Core nice and tight. Hands on out underneath those elbows. One last thing, the flaring of those elbows. We want those elbows to be at about a 45 going back when we lower ourselves down to the floor. So they're not going to be flaring directly out like this. They're not going to be going directly back unless we're doing a tricep push-up. They are instead going to be in between, flaring back at about a 45 degree. This will ensure that we are dividing that force primarily between that chest, a little bit of the triceps, a little bit of the shoulders. When those elbows are locked in at our sides in a tricep push-up, that's putting more of the focus on those triceps, less on chest and shoulders. When they are out at more of a 90, that's putting more focus on the shoulders, less on the chest, less on those triceps. So once you have the proper movement here, the proper form on these, and you've gone through a couple push-ups on those knees, and you can get full range of motion all the way to the floor, all the way up, then I want you to pop up onto those toes. Same focus. Make sure hand position is correct. Make sure those abs are nice and tight. Leading with the chest, nice and low to the floor, and pressing back on up. If you find that you're not able to get all the way down to the floor, maybe you can only get halfway down and you don't have the strength to go the rest of the way without collapsing to the floor, you're not ready for push-ups on the toes yet. Remember, with any exercise, full range of motion on that exercise with a lighter weight or less demand on that muscle group is going to produce better results than a higher demand on that muscle group with a less range of motion. So until you are able to go all the way down to the floor and all the way back up on those push-ups on those toes, stick with those knee ones. You can always do one or two if you're in that transition point, 1 or 2 on the toes, full range of motion, and then if you can't get any more without having to stop halfway, then drop to those knees and finish it off.